Halloween week starts right here, and we're kicking it off with pure nightmare fuel.
Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, back in the spotlight as we re-examine the case that made California sleep with the lights on. Before he was the Night Stalker, he was a teenage predator. Richard Ramirez's first job was at a Holiday Inn in El Paso, Texas. Sounds harmless, right? But with a master key in his pocket, he started sneaking into guest rooms, robbing people, watching them while they slept. One night, he went further. He tried to assault a guest in her room, but her husband fought him off. Ramirez was fired, but that's it. No charges. The couple were just passing through and didn't want to come back to Texas for a trial. This was 1975. Richard was 15 years old, and he was only getting started. I'm Chris. Let's recap. Sean Penn, Hollywood's bad boy, gets slapped with 60 days in LA County Jail. Why? Because he decided to clock an extra on the set of Colors. Yeah, not his best moment. Now, here's where it gets stranger than fiction. Sean ends up locked up right near Richard Ramirez, the infamous Night Stalker, and Richard wants Sean Penn's autograph. So Sean plays it cool. He says, fine, but he's got to write me something first. So Richard sends him a note. Hey Penn, stay tough and hit them again. Signed Richard Ramirez, 666. He even draws a pentagram and a doodle of the devil on it. Sean sends him this note back. Richard, it's impossible to be incarcerated and not feel a certain kinship with your fellow inmates. Well, Richard, I've done the impossible. I feel absolutely no kinship with you. And I hope gas descends upon you before sanity does. It would be a kinder way out. Not exactly the autograph he was hoping for, but enough jail stories. Here's why the world came to know him as the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez is living in San Francisco's Tenderloin district. His building is just 6 blocks from 9-year-old Mei Lung and her family. One night, Mei and her 8-year-old brother go down to the basement to look for a lost dollar bill. But somewhere down there, they get separated. About half an hour later, her brother finds her hanging from a pipe. She's been sexually assaulted and stabbed. The case goes cold until 2009. That's when DNA from a handkerchief ties her murder directly to Richard Ramirez, making her his first known victim. 2 months after May's murder, Richard strikes again. This time he's in Los Angeles, living at the Cecil Hotel. Yes, that Cecil Hotel. It has a reputation all its own. Suicides, murders, even other killers staying there. If you've ever heard of Elisa Lam, the young woman found in the hotel's rooftop water tank in 2013, she was staying on the top floor when she mysteriously died. Back in 1984, Richard Ramirez paid $14 a night for a room on that same floor. As the story goes, he would toss his bloody clothes in the hotel dumpster, then stroll through the lobby completely naked. That was his home for a few weeks during his infamous spree that left 13 dead, tortured, assaulted, and robbed. It starts with 79-year-old Jennie Vincow on June 28, 1984. She lives alone in an apartment building just a few doors away from her son. That night, Richard Ramirez slips into her home through an open window. What he does inside is brutal. He stabs her repeatedly, slashes her throat so violently she's nearly decapitated, and sexually assaults her. Her son is the one who finds her the next morning. For months, Richard stays under the radar. All the while, there are a series of child abductions happening in the area. All of the children are sexually assaulted, then abandoned. In March 1985, the violence explodes. Maria Hernandez is coming home, unlocking her front door when he jumps out of the shadows and shoots. Somehow she survives and runs for her life, but he pushes inside. Her roommate Dale Okazaki never has a chance. He shoots her dead in the kitchen. And he's still not finished. Later that same night, he drags another woman, Sailan Yu, out of her car and kills her on the spot. A week later, Vincent and Maxine Zazara are attacked in their own home. Vincent is shot in his sleep. Maxine is brutally assaulted, stabbed, and her eyes are gouged out. Richard leaves behind shoe prints from his signature Avia sneakers, an early clue that ties multiple scenes together. From there, his spree explodes across Southern California. He doesn't have a type. Old, young, men, women, no one is safe. He invades homes at night, using the darkness like a weapon. Sometimes he kills on the spot. Other times he tortures and taunts his victims, telling them to swear to Satan. He carries a .22 caliber handgun, knives, cords, even a tire iron, and he mixes sexual assault with robbery and murder, leaving communities in a constant state of fear. But survivors remembered one thing above all else: his teeth. Years of living on candy and cocaine had rotted them out, decayed, missing, reeking. He carried a stench you couldn't shake, with a smile of a deranged clown. Now, imagine that face leaning over you in the dark. By the summer of 1985, newspapers are screaming his new nickname, the Night Stalker. But he gets sloppy. Survivors start giving descriptions. Police piece together his pattern and match his fingerprints on file to those at the crime scenes. And when his mugshot is released to the public, the city goes on high alert. On August 31st, 1985, he's spotted in East LA. Locals recognize him, chase him down, and beat him bloody until police arrive. It's everyday citizens, not law enforcement, who finally bring him down. Now, are monsters born or are they made? You tell me. Richard Ramirez came into the world in El Paso, Texas on February 29, 1960, but trouble started before he ever took his first breath. His mother worked in a factory while pregnant, exposed to toxic chemicals every day. She didn't quit until 5 months in after suffering dizzy spells. On top of that, the family lived near a nuclear test site, a place linked to a spike in birth defects. And Richard's childhood only got darker. At 2 years old, a dresser toppled onto him and knocked him out. At 5, a swing hit him in the head. Another concussion. He was later diagnosed with epilepsy, enduring more than 24 seizures before his teens. By 7, he was plagued with vivid nightmares about monsters so real he was afraid he might see them while awake. His father, a former policeman in Mexico, kept a brutal household. When Richard's older brothers fell into drugs and theft, his father beat them savagely. Richard was so terrified he sometimes slept in a cemetery just to escape the violence at home. But the worst influence came from his cousin, Miguel, a Vietnam vet and a predator. He bragged to Richard about raping, torturing, and murdering women overseas. He showed him Polaroids of the atrocities, and he told him, having power over life and death is a high. You control who lives and who dies. You are God. Miguel also trained Richard in combat tricks, how to sneak up on people, how to kill. Then in 1973, when Richard was just 13, he watched Miguel shoot and kill his wife right in front of him. Miguel swore him to secrecy. By 14, Richard was living with his sister and her husband, who took him along to spy on women at night. Add it all up, and by the time he made it to California, Richard Ramirez was already a hardened thief, drug addict, rapist, child molester with the skill set of a killer. When they finally caught him in 1985, the city of Los Angeles breathed a sigh of relief. But the nightmare wasn't over. The trial of the Night Stalker would turn into one of the longest and most bizarre in California history. First, there were the charges. He wasn't just facing 1 or 2 murders. Prosecutors hit him with 13 murder counts, plus attempted murders, sexual assaults, and dozens of burglaries. The evidence spanned multiple crime scenes, counties, and years. That alone meant endless witnesses, mountains of forensic work, and survivors who had to testify in gruesome detail. Then there was Richard himself. In court, he acted less like a defendant on trial for murder and more like he was headlining a show. He flashed a pentagram on his palm, shouted "Hail Satan," smirked at grieving families, and strutted around in dark sunglasses like he was some kind of rock god. And unbelievably, he had groupies. Women packed the courtroom just to get a look at him. They sent love letters, swooned over him, treated the Night Stalker like he was a celebrity instead of a killer. The whole thing turned into a circus. There were also delays behind the scenes. His defense team fought over strategy, judges recused themselves. At one point, a juror didn't show up because she'd been murdered by her boyfriend. Imagine the panic in that courtroom. People actually thought Richard had somehow ordered a hit from jail. He hadn't, but still, nightmare fuel. All of that stretched the trial to 4 years. Finally, in 1989, a jury found him guilty on all counts. 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, 14 burglaries. When the judge handed down the death sentence, Ramirez grinned and said, "Big deal. Death always comes with the territory. I'll see you in Disneyland. That was the Night Stalker, terrifying in life and defiant even in judgment. For decades, Richard Ramirez sat on death row in San Quentin, waiting for the gas chamber. And here's where it gets even stranger. In 1996, he got married to a pen pal. Her name was Doreen Leoy, an editor at Tiger Beat, the teen magazine every kid in the 80s had stuffed in their backpack. What drew her in? Not his words, not his charm, his mugshot. She saw his face, became infatuated, and over the years sent him more than 1,000 love letters. That obsession turned into a wedding ceremony inside the prison. Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was now somebody's husband. But their love didn't last long. By his last years, she'd cut ties with him. In the end, cancer did what California never could. It killed Richard Ramirez. In June 2013, he died at 53 years old from complications of B-cell lymphoma. By then, he'd been behind bars nearly 24 years. The appeals, the motions, the endless legal delays, all of it kept him alive long past his sentence. But his body was falling apart. Years of hepatitis C, drug abuse, and disease left him a wreck. By the time he died, his skin had turned an eerie green. One victim's relative summed it up bluntly. Good riddance. May he rot in hell.
We've got a full week of true crime terror lined up, so hit subscribe now. You do not want to miss what's coming after this.